Blythwood's traceable history goes back to 1881, when Annie and George Clark left their homes in Gravesend in the English county of Kent with their 4 daughters and a son to emigrate to Canada. They settled on Gordon Street in the small village of Davisville, one of the small pioneer settlements which sprang up along that dirty and dusty thoroughfare named Yonge Street, seen here at Erskine Avenue. Davisville, together with the village of Eglinton, incorporated in 1889 to create the village of North Toronto, with a population of 750. This is Yonge Street, viewed here looking north from Glen Grove. From this point on, there were only farmsteads, such as this one, the property of a Mr. Lawrence, which is now the corner of Yonge and Lawrence. On February 14, 1887, Annie Clark started a Sunday school in her Davisville home. Annie Clark's children's Bible study is considered by many to be the planting of the seed that has led to what is now Blythwood Road Baptist Church. 12 months later, in February of 1888, a church was organized with 16 members. Worship services were held in the Eglinton Town Hall at Montgomery and Yonge for the next year and a half. Soon a church building was needed. The 1888 assessment rolls for the municipality of Eglinton Ward West records that Annie Clark's husband, George, was a real estate agent. Mr. Clark was instrumental in securing a piece of the Jacks estate on the west side of Yonge Street, near what is now St. Clements Avenue, for $800. In the summer of 1888, the Yonge Street Baptist Church was erected and its doors opened on Sunday the 13th of October. The first pastor was a Reverend H. Havland, a graduate of McMaster Hall. As the future of the area seemed uncertain, many families moved away, leaving only some 18 members. When the mortgage payments became heavy for the congregation to bear, the church was closed. But they did not give up. A year later, they sold some of the land, which reduced their mortgage payments by more than half. The church reorganized and joined the Baptist Convention of Ontario and Quebec under a new name, Zion Baptist Church. They reopened the little church building with much rejoicing on Sunday, August 1st, 1892. The centennial celebrations of 1992 at Blythwood date from this memorable occasion. By 1911, the little wooden church became too small. With a team of horses and many willing hands, it was moved to a new site on Castlefield Avenue. The facade was redone during the renovation and construction to echo the neighboring Castlefield homes. In 1914, the structure was raised on blocks and the building enlarged at a cost of $10,000. The original Zion windows were incorporated into the renovated building, and the church was renamed Castlefield Avenue Baptist Church. With pride, the congregation filled the pews in their new church. In 1926, a young man named Colin Farmer moved to Toronto and joined Castlefield. We are truly indebted to him for his lifetime dedication to photography, which allows us to enjoy all these memories today. Colin's pictures tell us of life at Castlefield. Sunday school classes, such as the primary class of Ida Dexter, which was attended by June Russell, the great-granddaughter of Annie and George Clark, seen here giving her donation. A Bible class led by Mary Farmer, she's fourth from the left. BYPU, Baptist Young People's Union groups, and a Ruth Troyer mission circle. Music was important, and it shows in the large junior choir and senior choir, both of which were very important elements in the worship of the growing congregation. Here's a roster of serious-looking deacons. We also get a glimpse of the many social occasions at Castlefield: weddings, bridal showers, farewell parties. Here's Jim White presented with a gift by Clayton Hurlbert, and a smiling crowd looks on. There are some who might think, these are all strange people to me. Not so. Some of the faces are of people who are today's members at Blythwood, such as Clayton Hurlbert and Erica Guza with her late husband Herbert. Here we see Jean Lowes as a young lady teaching Sunday school children, and here she is in a very familiar role of feeding people. In this picture of the deacons, you will recognize Ross Lugston in the top row, Colin Farmer, father of Kathy Salter, top right, George Dixon, the portly gentleman on the front left, and his wife in the black dress, were part of Zion's congregation and are also parents of Ruth Hurlburt, second from the left, late wife of our Clayton Hurlburt, the parents of John Hurlburt. And Eva and Walter Palmenter, front right, are the parents of Dorothy Neal, Ralph Neal's wife. In the world outside, major events must have made themselves felt. The city of Toronto grew northward, and its annexation in 1912 made the municipality named North Toronto disappear. Interesting to note that McMaster Hall was first located on Bloor Street. McMaster provided a succession of ministers to Zion, Castlefield, and Blythwood churches. The streetscapes change. In 1923, streetcar tracks were extended and Yonge Street was paved as shown here north of Belsize Drive. And the same view 5 years later showing increased development. Dramatic events in our church's history include the outbreak of World War I in 1914 and the Second World War in 1939 and the stock market crash of 1929. In 1938, Castlefield Church needs enlargement. In this picture taken at the sod turning ceremony, note the smallest child, John Hurlburt. The facade was changed with some cleaner lines, but still showing the original roofline and the windows of the Zion Church. Life at Castlefield went on despite the hard times, or maybe because of the hard times. In 1948, Reverend Hilmer Nordland commenced his ministry at Castlefield with his wife Anne. The church grew and prospered. By the 1950s, Castlefield was bursting at the seams. The facilities had become too small and couldn't be expanded anymore. After 7 years of planning, the plans for a new church began to take on reality under the building committee. Seen here, top left to right, Art J. Hurlburt, replacing his brother Clayton, who was in hospital for surgery, Harvey Atwell, A.D. Leach, Fred Halford, the treasurer, M.C. Hooper, chair of the deacons, Mrs. Jean Hill, Alfred Hall, chairman, Holland Pettit, vice chair, Mrs. Mary Farmer, the secretary. There were fundraising events, such as a special kickoff dinner in the basement of Castlefield, a further loyalty dinner at the Glenview Presbyterian Church, which also provided the catering, and a Christmas tree sale. In 1955, under the watchful eyes of architect J.E. Hoare and one of his able assistants, Castlefield's own young man Donald Halford, the construction of Blythwood began by the digging of a 20-foot deep hole for the basement. The walls started to rise. Finally, on a chilly November 10th, 1955, the laying of the cornerstone was duly celebrated with Messrs. Nordland, McDormand, Johnston, Hoare, Hurlburt, Hall, and Hill leading the ceremony. And Reverend Nordland, Clayton Hurlburt, Fred Poulton, R.D. Hill, Walter Palmenter, and Bruce Fowler posing for a picture. The Salvation Army Band added to the festivities. As work proceeded, people admired these great laminated arches of BC fir, made especially for Blythwood in Quebec. Being nearly 50 feet in total span, these laminated members were the largest ever manufactured in Canada and had to be transported to Toronto on special railway cars. The church's spire had to be built on the ground and lifted into place with a giant crane. Nearly a year elapsed from the laying of the cornerstone until the opening. An exceedingly busy time for Alf Hall and his team, which included Walter Palmenter, an interior decorator, and Theora Lewis, mother of Betty Slynn. Their committee was involved in picking out the furniture and furnishings, and also in packing everything which had to be moved from Castlefield. A turquoise carpet for the sanctuary was ordered and specially woven for Blythwood in England. The beautiful Cassavant Frères organ had to be moved from Castlefield. Finally, the big day drew closer. On October 27, 1956, the Reverend Nordland, under the watchful eyes of trustees Clayton Hurlburt, Cleve Hooper, and R.D. Hill, closed the doors at Castlefield for the last time. A final picture of the congregation was taken on the front steps, and many of you recognize Shirley and Murray Hurlburt, Percy Boer on the left, and Anne Nordland in the top right corner.